out of that. Let's give the libertarians and the Republicans, let's give them a benefit of the doubt here and say, okay, single payer isn't the way to go, because I do know that there are a lot of poor people who will do things like call an ambulance for a yeast infection. What if we were to start with things like doctors and hospitals have to post their charges, and they have to be equivalent from the same from no matter who's paying for it. So if you go to the doctor for a walking boot, they have to charge you your cash price the same that they will charge the insurance companies. If it's $900, guess what? People are going to stop paying it. Give us the opportunity to drop our insurance and pay in cash. And make doctors and hospitals charge the same no matter what. Now insurance companies are going to have to start working for you. And stop giving them subsidies from the government. So now you have the choice. Do I want to pay out of pocket, or do I want an insurance company? Let's not allow insurance companies to discriminate based on pre-existing conditions or any of those things, because, hey, you can't discriminate with your business based on, sex or gender or whatever, or disability. So why does the insurance company have the ability to discriminate based on disability, which I would consider a pre-existing condition a disability, right?
Right.
So if we stop allowing them to do that and start having these medical professionals post their prices, now you're going to say, $900 for a walking boot, $75 for. I'm going to go with the $75 doctor over here.
I think
now they're going
work.
to have to compete the way that everyone else does.
I think that will work if they're actually forced to post the specific make and model of whatever they're advertising they're going to give off. Okay? So, for example, the doctor says...
And it has to be the same no matter who's paying.
Right. So the doctor says, okay, you're going to need a walking boot. Here's the make and model. It's going to cost you this. Wonderful thing. You can get almost fucking anything on Amazon these days. I could have got a walking boot for $75, and instead my insurance company paid almost $1,000. Okay? I would much rather pay the $75 for the same fucking thing on Amazon than spending $900+ at the doctor's office. And that's the problem with our country, is we have the ability to do stuff like that, but we don't have the infrastructure or the drive to make it happen. And I agree with you. I think that if doctors were forced to post their rates, this is what it's going to cost you if you have a tooth pulled. This is what it's going to cost if you have to have a hangnail removed. This is what it's going to cost for a suppository up your ass. People will start shopping around on their own.
And they should have to consult with you about those prices prior to treatment. We went to Mexico. My husband went to the dentist, and they had a price list. You want a tooth pulled, it costs this much. You want a cleaning, it costs this much. You want a root canal, it costs this much. Period. That's how much it costs. Sure, we take insurance, but these are our prices. If I go to the grocery store, I go to Fry's and I buy a gallon of milk, it's going to cost me the same as it's going to cost you. Now, if you go to a different Fry's or a different grocery store, it's going to cost something different. But that one store has to charge everyone the same amount of money.
Right.
And you get to see how much that is prior to purchase.
Yeah,
I think
and
that's
you should.
Definitely, if we're going to be open-minded about it and not just push single payer, because honestly, I don't trust the government with our money. So if we have a single-payer system, they're going to tax us for that, and they're going to charge us according to that, and we're still going to be screwed.
Right.
So
that's because our country is run by corporations now, when it wasn't 40 years ago. So, yeah.
So it was very interesting. A friend of mine is going to school for her doctorate in nurse practitioning. And, there was a time when a nurse practitioner wasn't a nurse practitioner. They were a physician's assistant. Remember that? And they could write prescriptions, but they had to do it under a doctor's care. Well, now currently we have a situation where some states are green states and some states are red states. A green state is where a doctor of nurse practitioning, which is, someone who has a doctorate in nursing, and they don't have to be overseen by a physician. They are essentially now your family practitioner. Now, remember, there was a time when your family doctor could take care of your broken leg. They could cast you. They don't do that anymore. Everything is specialized. So now in green states, what would happen is you would go to a nurse practitioner as your family doctor. So she or he is the person you go to for, I have a rash, or I have, I have poison ivy, or I have a pink eye, or I have a yeast infection, or all these basic things. And if something outside of what they can take care of needs to be seen by a specialist, they can refer you. This is going to be a less expensive option. So I hope that less expensive is the way it would go, but we're getting rid of the family doctor in lieu of doctors of nurse practitioning instead. So you have a broken heel, you do go to an orthopedic specialist. But you get that pink eye, you go to your nurse practitioner who doesn't need to be overseen by a doctor. And at first I was kind of like, I'm not really sure about that, but I do know that nurses have a lot of on-the-job experience. They have a lot of patient experience that doctors don't actually have.
Right, because they deal with the patients more than the doctor does.
We're doing things to make things less expensive. Right, exactly.
Now, speaking of that
but
kind
either
of stuff,
way, those prices need to be posted.
So let's switch gears now that we've discussed healthcare. Now, here in Arizona, we had Proposition 206 on the ballot. For those of you that are outside of Arizona, what Arizona has, and of course until they destroy it at the legislature, is we have the ability to do what's called a citizens initiative, where citizens or representatives of the citizens, I guess you could say, can actually create an initiative. And in this case, it was to raise the minimum wage. It was called Prop 206. And it made it to the ballot in November. And the voters decided that, yes, Arizona needs to raise the minimum wage. Corporate interests, what is that group that's always against anything? Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry argued and took it to court, sued, saying that it was unjust and violated the Constitution. It violated a constitutional provision that any ballot measure requiring the state to spend more money also include a source for that revenue, such as higher taxes. Business interests basically sued to stop the voters' will. And the Arizona Supreme Court unanimously said no. Okay, how often does that happen, where a state Supreme Court unanimously says no? So, that means that Prop 206, the will of the voters, because the voters voted for this, is now past the Supreme Court of Arizona, and we will the minimum wage in Arizona it's currently at $8.05 last year. It will be at $10 an hour this year, and a voter approved steps to $12 an hour by 2020. After that, the increases in the minimum wage will be linked to inflation, which makes a lot of sense. Now, so what do you think about the fight against this kind of thing?
Well, I think it's very interesting. So on the one hand, this actually helps the right. By having a voter initiative, the poor people in the left are saying, hey, we want better wages. We're going to pass this. We want to be paid more than $7 an hour, which most people do want. So the right doesn't want the left to have a win. So they're going to fight it. However, this $10 an hour wage, the way that it was written, because it was honestly done very poorly, means that small businesses are going to suffer, which means who's going to do better? Large businesses that can afford a $10 hour minimum wage without blinking an eye. So I don't know if it was just a scam to say, well, see, we're going to fight against you because we think you're wrong just because you're the left. But the reality is you shot yourself in the ass.
Well, the other side of that, too, is like you said, about the people that are going to be able to afford that are going to be corporations. Now, one of the things that I look at, though, okay, for example, if the current minimum wage is now $10 an hour because of this law, Prop 206, it's going to be real easy for people like places like Walmart to say, sure, we'll give you $10 an hour, and we're cutting your hours by 10%. Or we're cutting your hours by 20%.
So you're now part-time.
So now you're part-time, so you lose any kind of benefits you had, but you get $10 an hour. And I think a lot of these large corporations, because people need jobs, and so it's real easy to hire a bunch of people to work at Walmart, they're going to be able to actually cut back hours so that even if they raise the minimum wage and they start paying people $10 an hour, if they decrease the amount of hours they're allowed to work, they still win.
Exactly.
So you don't see an actual benefit.
Now you can go on welfare because you're making less money. You can go on welfare, and the tax dollars that we pay are paying for that. They're not paying for it. They don't give a shit.
Right.
But the right wants to show that they fought against the left. And, see, you got to win because, let's face it, we see that a lot right now. A lot of the Democrats in Congress and in state legislatures nationwide are being silenced.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the real benefits of this Prop 206 is that it mandates that employers provide at least 3 days of paid leave for workers every year. 3 days, that's it? Wow. Now, honestly, this is supposed to affect 900,000 Arizona workers where they don't have paid leave. So there is some benefit to that. They are forced to actually give 3 days of paid leave. But 3 days, really? We have become such a slave to capitalism that we just don't have the ability to enjoy life anymore. And that's fucking sad, honestly. The 3 paid days off, okay? It's like me. If I go to take a day off, I get phone calls on my day off from work. So we all, as a society, have become slaves to our jobs because you never can get away from it. You can never get away from your work in any way because they don't let you take off when you want to take off, or if you do take off, well, keep your cell phone so that we can call you if we need you, blah, blah, blah.
Fuck that, man.
What kind of a country have we become where we don't have the ability to basically, get away from that, to where we can actually enjoy, time off without having to feel oppressed and worrying about what's going on at work? It blows.
Well, I think that in your case, that's definitely true. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine today, and at his job, he works for an airline. And I'm not going to say what airline that is just because I don't want my buddy to get in trouble on this, but if you call in sick or you have to leave sick. Right. But if you're in the middle of your workday and you come down with food poisoning and, start exploding out of all ends and having seizures and whatever and have to go to the doctor, you get dinged for that happening. Unless you put in for the time off and it's approved and blah, 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 they will ding you. And it will go against you on your file. And if you have too many, you're fired. And you know what he said? He said, you know what? If something like that happens to me, if I get sick, I'll take the week off work. I'll go to the doctor. They'll say, when do you want to go back? I'll say, in a week from Monday or whatever. Because if I'm going to take the hit, I might as well give it back to them.
It's funny that you mentioned that. If you're going to take the hit anyway,
you might as well milk it. And
it's actually funny that you mentioned that because, I mean, I think I remember from I'm not going to say the company name, but the company we work for. There's something actually in the handbook. Okay, so if you go to work and you don't work a certain amount of your shift, it's considered an absence or a tardy or whatever, or what's the fucking word for it? Anyway, no, fuck it, I don't know what the word is, but still, the idea is okay. So if I go to work and less than half my shift is worked because all of a sudden I start shitting out of my face. That's just gross, isn't it? Anyway, say I start puking or something, and I can't stop puking, and I feel sick, and I need to go home. I get when it comes to like my next review and stuff like that. Well, you left early this day, or you